Okie dokie, we should be live. Good evening. It's been a while. Hope everyone is well. Just one moment. I want to drop a link somewhere to some people. I want to drop a link somewhere to some people. I recognize that voice. That's me. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about narcissistic abuse, the general conversation, but leaning more on the sort of coping with it and from it. So I've been interacting with some people who are new or inexperienced. So they're beginners in much regard. So for some of us, it might be a case of like going back to basics in a way. And I can't find a place where I want to drop this link. Sorry, I'm not very good when it comes to multitasking. Right. Okay, I have chat people want to join here at the link. All right. That started. All right. Okay. Let me check. Who's it? GM Freebird. Hey, good evening. Mastery of the basics is pretty important. Yeah. So unless there's people, I was kind of hoping some people might have their questions or something for me to sort of bounce off. If there isn't, then I'm just gonna have to freestyle some stuff. Otherwise, we might have a bit of a boring stream. That'd be very disappointing. But as always, I've been jotting away little notes and tidbits. So I have some things we could elaborate or whatever. Maybe some misconceptions or false beliefs. Some common things that perhaps people trip up with. One of the common problem areas that a lot of these new people I'm sort of talking with, they're having is joint custody and or co-parenting. Now the thing is, I've already done a stream on co-parenting, but it's a bit concerning that it's to be expected that there's always going to be like new people finding themselves in this predicament, which in turn also says that this problem of narcissism really, if we want to be kind of like brutally honest, will never be fully eradicated. It's gotten out of hand in modern times because of the lack of awareness and understanding and the speed at which the narcissist has taken advantage of people's lack of insight. But you can educate people in other things, in all sorts of, like, there'll always be a student, there'll always be beginners, there'll always be learners. So there'll always be people who do not realize that they're messing with maybe not just narcissists, but abusive or manipulative or toxic people in general. Usually it's not until they've incurred some damage do they start to then problem solve, which paves the way to wanting to find out or get to the bottom of what they're dealing with. So it's not their fault in a way that they didn't know better. It's not normal to be bringing children up with this kind of level of protection. It's kind of it's a bit of a somber, sad note if this is what you're having to try and teach your kids. And obviously, like, you should try not to make it so something along the lines of, like, not magnificent, but like magnified of severe importance, because it interferes with just trying to enjoy life and general upbringing and parenting. It's nice to think, maybe it's a bit naive, but it'd be nice to think that you could raise children in, like, with some security and safety, that it's not something you need to really emphasize to them. But in saying that, if your upbringing is as such, the lessons are kind of incorporated. So one of the biggest protections against narcissism, for example, is the building of self-esteem. So as long as you're doing that, then you're mitigating the chances of this child putting up with, doesn't mean they're not going to encounter it, but I mean in terms of being sucked in and being exploited and taken advantage of, but it will minimize that risk. So in a way, you're sort of indirectly providing them the tools to manage encounters of this type if they should happen. Right. Here we go. She wants to, well, we're going to have this, are we? All right. Well, I know, GM, I know you'd prefer to be on panel to hash it out, really, because it would be unfair if it's just me talking at you and you don't get to have your jabs back. So which came first, feminism or narcissism? Narcissism. Oh, I don't know. Well, yes, narcissism. It's been around since the dawn of time. Children are born narcissists. They're not necessarily born as feminists. Narcissism is a survival mechanism. Feminism is an identity. So you cultivate feminism, but narcissism is a survival mechanism. It's part of ego defenses, and when we're talking about narcissists, now we're talking about personality disorders and things. So it's a part of a person's makeup, as it were. Whereas feminism, in terms of from a narcissistic stance, is just a shell. It's just it's a mask. No real different in that context than any other campaigner. It's just whatever mask or shell that they can hide behind that will allow them to get what they want. So it could be dropped. You can get a feminist who will drop the guise of feminism, and they will pick up a different. They'll become a eco warrior or something, but their narcissism underneath still remains. So I'm sure you're going to argue with me about this, but my argument is that narcissism is more at the core, more precursor, and feminism is just a banner of virtue. It's just an identity. They don't really mean, they don't believe in their ideology as such. So come on. Any more sort of narcissist related recovery questions? Or should I just cover? So a person stumbles on this idea of what they're dealing with could be a narcissist, their partner, and their world is being flipped upside down. There are some common courses of actions and ways of thinking that targets, I'll say target instead of victims, because I don't want to encourage like this idea of victimhood, but the targets of narcissistic abuse they go through. So it's kind of a little bit like the grieving process. So there's like denial. They're usually a bit outraged. They're usually confused. And there's this sentiment of like, because survival is at risk, self-centeredness with the target, and it's for very good reasons, and you can't fault them for thinking such a way, and to some extent they're correct. So the narcissist usually wants to punish and destroy their target, who is their partner. But this when you understand the narcissism further, this might seem counterintuitive, because you need to remember that for the narcissist, they are preoccupied with wanting control and fuel or supply. So if they destroy their source of fuel, primary fuel, most likely, then you would think this doesn't make a logical, this wouldn't bode well for the narcissist. So the idea is not to completely annihilate the target, is to inflict as much damage as possible, yes. But to be a good abuser, you need to be able to torture them indefinitely. So it's kind of like, I think an analogy they sort of describe, usually this is in the love bombing, but this is like an extreme version of it, is to sort of to drown you, to smother you, and just before you're about to croak and die, to lift your head out of the water so you can catch your breath. So as much as they may seem to want to annihilate you, they don't want you out of the picture completely. They want to be able to see the pain that they've inflicted. So yes, they might have moved on and married someone else and run off into the sunset, but they're still semi wanting to see, or at least hear on the wind, the tales of your demise, so they can kind of like feed off their handiwork. And I say semi because the narcissist's attention is like narrow-sighted. So if they have got new supply and they've run off trying to live another life, well, they're already living a double life before, but now they're trying to separate. That secondary source of supply has been promoted into your position as primary. You're now secondary. So they're a bit preoccupied. They're a bit more focused on the new target, making sure they're brainwashed and they got their claws in and things like that. But for the previous or the former primary source, which are these people that we encounter who are trying to put their lives back together, this is a false belief. They still think it's purely about them, because in part some of their ego is trying to assert themselves as a person. It's like, this has been done to me as a person, me as a human, not realizing this is where, in terms of recovery, when you are able to see yourself through their eyes, that you were basically a utensil or a object or an appliance, it removes the personal attachment to it. So then you realize that it's not so much that they did this to you because of you deliberately, you. It's more of a case of you happened to be there. You were at the wrong place at the wrong time, and you served your purpose. You became depleted, drained, dysfunctional. You weren't able to put up with the abuse anymore or whatever. And so the narcissist went over to a new utensil. In much the same way as people discard their mobile phones. You don't really, you might think back to your previous phone, but there isn't really a sentimental attachment to it. These are your projection, or the target's projections, thinking that surely this narcissist isn't inhumane like this. Surely they must care. And that's where victims make, or targets make the mistake. Good evening, Mr. Hemi. Now there was a tangent I was going to say about the targets also making another. So with the narcissist wanting the prime aims here being control and fuel, if you've got the former ex-partner dazed and confused in a land of disorientation, they're not really going anywhere. So in terms of having them under control, that objective is secured. And so as you can see why, in terms of prerogative for the narcissist, they don't have to be concerned about losing control of the former partner. It's the new partner that takes priority. And in terms of the fuel, well, if you are confused and hurt and devastated and so on, you are gushing out fuel. You're an emotional wreck. Then you can see why the narcissist isn't going to perhaps answer your calls or address any or give you any closure. They've got no obligation to make you happy or to put your mind at rest. You're still, even though you've been discarded, you're still part of that fuel matrix. You're still being abused, even though you've been, as they would say, shelved. So the narcissist is preoccupied with not just with the new partner, but the idea of image as well to friends, family, and society. So the narcissist is, if all is going air quotes, like well, as the narcissist is trying to plan out, then they can come back, because maybe you're married, maybe you've got kids, so they haven't totally forgotten to at some point need to check in on you. But you can see how, unless the target starts to wisen up, the narcissist has full advantage. They move at their own pace. They deal with things how they wish. They got everyone on board with them, and the victim is so helpless that they don't see how, unless they start to realize and have some sort of intervention, some sort of mental breakthrough, it's only going to get worse for them. More desperate, more erratic, more depressed, more lost and bewildered. Good evening, Tommy. Oh, yeah, okay. Question. So are you saying, Billy, that feminist ideology can't possess someone unless, sorry, let me put on the screen, unless they are a narcissist? No, you don't have to be a narcissist necessarily to possess the ideology of feminism. I mean, a vulnerable person, someone who is vulnerable, can be sucked into the feminist ideology relationship. So in a way, like a flying monkey, the feminist flying monkey, for example. Now, in terms of narcissism with their flying monkeys, quite often the flying monkey is also a narcissist, or at least has some narcissistic traits. But even as we're discussing like partners and relationships here, if you were a partner of a narcissist, in a way, you were like a flying monkey. You were an enabler. You would defend your partner. The codependent would defend the narcissist. So it doesn't mean you can condemn that spouse, but until they've realized their responsibility in the whole situation, they're accountable for their part, then it's like the agents in the Matrix. Everyone's a potential agent. Then the flying monkey and the enablers and family members and white knights, for example, they're on team narcissist. So it doesn't mean necessarily that they are a narcissist, but they're fighting on that side. So you might have people who are feminists, they're on team feminist, doesn't necessarily mean they're a narcissist. But until they have that epiphany and decide, not just an epiphany on its own, but the decision to take ownership of it and break out of the cult, then for all intents and purposes, they are classed as a feminist, or maybe a feminist supporter, something like the male feminist, for example, something like that. So that's my take on answering your question there. Someone doesn't necessarily have to be a narcissist in order to be possessed by feminism. And not just like if I'm saying that feminism is interchangeable with any other kind of woke ideology, save the planet, save the children, be a vegan, be some sort of radical extremist, it's not, the words themselves don't particularly matter. The name of the identity doesn't particularly matter. It's that you've got vulnerable people who are susceptible, naive, gullible, impressionable. They got low self-esteem. They haven't got a very good sense of self and identity, so they latch on to a false promise, which is kind of like what feminism is. It's a false promise. It's like saying, join us, join our cult, and we will grant you identity. We will grant you significance. You will matter if you are one of us. So that's the linchpin, or that's the hook that gets these people, youngsters who are still trying to find like self-discovery and navigate through life. They're meandering around. They're not sure who to listen to. So they latch on. They listen to different groups and they go, right, this one sounds, I like the sound of this feminism stuff. It sounds empowering. It sounds stunning and brave. I want to be that. So blam, they go in that direction. So it's more of a kind of see in the old days, people would be worried about a cult, singular, like there's this cult going around. But nowadays there are cults everywhere. They're just not recognized so much as that, and some of it might seem very mundane, like the cycling club or something, and this ain't to knock on cyclists or knock on the other groups for wanting to save planet, save kids, save children. It's the taking it to the next stage. It's the disingenuous version of it. So if you want to cycle, great. But if you want to be one of these cyclists that think you now own the road and you could be a jerk to other people on the road, then you can see how you've taken cycling as a privileged freedom pass. It lets you get away with doing what you want. It's like the spoilt entitledness of said label. And this is where the feminism would be described as narcissism, because it's like, if I call myself a feminist, now you can't say squat to me. My body, my choice, me too, believe all women, do as I say. So I'm a tyrant, and the reason why I could be a tyrant is because I've got this privileged pass of being called a feminist. You can't touch me or do anything to me. I get to do what I want. I'm a protected minority or whatever. And then if you say anything to me, I'll call you sexist, I'll call you racist, I'll call you, for accusations at you. BPD, Black Pill Daniels. Yeah. Howdy. BPD, I'm guessing that's because it stands for Black Pill Daniels and not BPD as in borderline personality disorder. But hey, salute. Thank you for joining. So what's Tommy saying? I am taking breaks from Discord. I need to focus on things in my personal life. Very good. Very good. Take breaks from the cult of cyber technology. brain rot and sucking away your life, like go touch grass. Yeah, fine. See, working on things in my personal life, if people did more of that and focus on things that they need to do, and build their sense of self and so on, their sense of self-esteem, they occupy themselves with tasks and hobbies and whatnots, then it's like win-win-win, because not only are you being more attached to reality, but you'll find that you'll have a better sense of stability. You will generate your own self-esteem. You'll be less dependent on other people. You'll be less drawn in by drama. You'll be disinterested with drama and the gossip. You'll be like, I don't give a damn anymore. It sounds like juvenile squabbles, and it is. But when you've got a deficit in your life, in your real life, then you fill the void with gobbledygook. Suddenly now, trivial stuff seem to be of the utmost importance. Oh, did you hear what so and so said? Oh, did you see that post? Oh, did you? Oh my God! Oh, and then your imagination starts running wild, and you start getting paranoid and all sorts of, like, you're opening the doorways to hell at this point. When people are just like, I mean, we're talking about narcissism. In a way, is a very basic. It's complicated on the one hand, but once you kind of wrap your head around the core principles, it's one of the most simplest, in my opinion, dysfunctions to be dealing with. So as much as people might, and this ain't to demean or devalue, what people go through, but because I don't know, it seems like a fad or a trend. Like narcissism is like, woohoo, the big topic of the day or whatever. But like dealing with someone who's borderline is a lot more challenging. I'm not too affluent with schizotypical and schizophrenia, but they're kind of, apart from, let me see if I can remember it, schizoid is devoid of the emotions, so they're still attached to reality, but the other two are disconnected. Hallucinations, odd eccentric behaviors. That's where word salad originated from. Disorganized thoughts and speech, and just going a bit, like, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but like gaga, like loopy. Cluster A, they're more challenging. Cluster C is challenging. They're all challenging in their own respects. It's like with the victims or the targets of these said abuses from narcissism can be more difficult to deal with than dealing with the narcissist themselves. When I'm talking with people and they've got these false beliefs, like misconceptions can be clarified, so it's a little bit easier to deal with, like a misconception. But when they've got false beliefs, that is, now you've got like rewiring to do, and it can be hard for them. And so, like, okay, statistically or whatever, you look at the the sort of what they say is the recovery rate or whatever, a fraction of a percent will actually go through with the so-called healing and recovery. Now, that's a bit subjective. Some people say, like, you never fully recover, you have scars and whatnot. But a lot of the victims, and this is why I get a bit cause for concern, is that in the mixture of these victims, and this is why I get a bit careful with the word victim, because some of these people aren't really victims. they're either maybe narcissists themselves, or they are perhaps got other, like maybe they're borderline or something, or they've got maybe like they've got a set of bad behaviors that makes it hard for me to think of them as true victims, as helpless little lambs. I'll see some of these so-called victims wanting to make a database of their alleged narcissist. That was a very recent one, and I did a video on that ages ago. So you can see that it's a recurring. You see it in different communities where some people maybe they're driven by their frustration and their anger, but they don't see how damaging and dangerous that kind of practice is, and then to be sharing it in communities of other vulnerable people who are trying to recover. That's not how you recover. You don't recover by encouraging your fellow brothers and sisters, or people who have been traumatized and such, encouraging them to go on a witch hunt and to run a smear campaign on their so-called narcissistic ex, and not see the shortcomings and the precarious situation they create when they attempt to do such a thing. And you point this out to them and they don't like hearing it, and they want to have a fight and an argument about it. You can see how like this isn't conducive for healthy behavior that is supposed to be going towards where's your recovery in this? Where's your healing in this? No, it just sounds like you want revenge, an eye for an eye sort of thing. Freebird says self-defined victim privilege. Well, yes, this is so. Right, I'll come back to you there in a second, Black. So that's the thing, because they think that because they're victims, this gives just like feminism, like this other thing is like the freedom pass of like, now I can do whatever I like. I could be a bully because I've got the banner of victim. I'm protected. This is my shield. You can't touch me because I'm a victim, so I can do what I like. And it's a power play, just like using a label like feminism, or save the planet, or save the children, or save whatever, or cycle for your, save the road, whatever these SJW generally progressive types, fight for your freedom, because it's a cowardly strategy as well, but it's a power play. It's I mean, it's kind of, you can, if it wasn't for what it is, you can kind of understand logically like why one would try such a thing, because it's sort of like invincibility. It's like, yeah, I say merit, like you can see the merit in it, but I'm not trying to promote it as a good thing, but you can see like the benefit of why someone would try to do something like that. But when you understand why they're doing it, then the mask kind of dissolves. And then you look around and you'll be like, yeah, society is riddled with this kind of strategy now. Loads of people, loads of groups are trying to have this kind of privilege pass of, you can't touch me. I'm a gay, I'm a trans, I'm an ethnic minority, I'm an asylum seeker, I'm this, I'm that, I'm whatever. And so it gets to a point where everyone is, I mean, they used to call them like snowflakes, but everyone is trying to have this argument of like, it's one thing there are vulnerable people, yes, and this is exploiting that classification of person. You know, there are people who are victims, but what Freebird is writing out here and what we're describing are those who take advantage of victims, the wolf in sheep's clothing, hide using them, like the Me Too movement is completely an abusive angle, which hurts true victims. So then how do you help people who need helping without also helping those who are trying to take advantage? It creates a very tricky situation that society needs to have discernment and ways of dealing with this, maybe exposing it, maybe breaking it down so that people can understand what it is they're seeing, because you get the cult of victim. So okay, what does BPD say? I was known as Red Pill Daniels. I took the black pill. Ah, yes. I wonder what your thoughts on the black pill are. There seems to be mixed feelings about mixed thoughts, mixed interpretations of the black pill. I can tell you mine if you're not already familiar with it. Now, what is it? Like looks maxing, SMVS, sexual market value, and some of that other stuff. Like, I don't believe in that stuff. That's not what black pill is to me. No. I'll say like red pill is like the bitter truth, and the black pill is kind of like the uncomfortable truth. Red pill sort of looks externally at the world around you and tries to use critical thinking, whereas black pill looks more internally and leans more into philosophy. It's all about the he said, she said, bull sheet. Yes. Yeah, it's Limp Bizkit, right? Okay. See the world for what it is and accepting reality. See, that would be, to me, you know, I'm not the pill police, but I would say that's more of a red pill perspective. Yeah. But if you were to say something like, to see the world for what it is and accepting reality in relation to who I am in that, you see how I'm trying to make it like traverse into the black pill, where you're like, oh yes, I'm just a mere speck in this greater machine of the world or whatever. Like, as much as I might think my life is of utmost importance, because obviously it would, you know, to you, you should matter. So yes, you would think that you are important. At the same time, you know, billions and zillions of lives have been lived. Like, will we be remembered? You know, and see, for me, the black pill be asking questions of like, so who am I? Who am I really? What am I? Why am I? What is my purpose? What do things mean to me? And so quite often I might brush up with a bit of nihilism, but I don't look at nihilism as a defeatist. This is the thing about those other types of black pill. They'll call themselves nihilists with this kind of defeatist mentality. Like, what's the point of it all? And you can see how if you're questioning like, who am I, what am I? What does it all matter? You can slip into that kind of negative thinking of like, well, what's the point of it all? When really those questions aren't supposed to be making you dive bomb into despair and oblivion. They're supposed to sprout out curiosity and inspiration. It's like, who am I? Well, wonderful. You don't know? Great. Guess what? We're going to go find out. Let's go on this adventure together and find out who you are. What's the meaning of it all? I don't know. Let's find out. Let's find meaning. Let's create meaning. Let's explore. Let's journey. Let's try things out. So my viewpoint of nihilism and black pill isn't as depressing as what it may seem. It's actually, I look at it in a very positive way, in a new beginnings, of creation. The world was created out of dust and nothingness, so there had to be an originating starting point. And I can look at black pill in that sense as kind of like, is it like ground zero or point zero or whatever? It's the big bang. It's not the big bang of the end of the world and all is over. It's actually the opposite. It's the big, like, it's just beginning, and that can be very daunting for people. But that's my interpretation. Obviously, you have yours. If it works for you, it works for you. No, I ain't gonna argue with you about it. All right, here we go. Smart ass here. All right. So, do we ever really see the world? Well, the world, reality, subjective perception, interpretation. You've got your senses. It's impossible to have a 100% accurate depiction of reality. It would send you insane. Information overload. So enough for you to be functioning will suffice. So your interpretation of the world will be different to mine. Obviously, you're in different parts of the country or whatever, parts of the planet. But even if we next to each other, or even like a husband and wife, or brothers or family, they all live very close. They're in the same neighborhood, same upbringing, and all this, but still they still have a different interpretation of the world, what they call the world, what matters to them. So there's different ingredients or components of like significance and value that help to shape what it is you actually see. Like, you don't see everything, you see what's important to you. So you have to have a value structure in order to have an interpretation of the world that is useful to you. It might not be useful to someone else, but for whatever reason, you've ascribed significance and importance to whatever it is you're noticing, and this is shaping what you see in the world. Which would mean, therefore, if you think the world is a hostile place, well, guess what that's saying about you as a person? That's what you are prioritizing as significance. It kind of means that something like you're insecure, you're vulnerable, you can't trust yourself well enough, and so to you, danger is everywhere. And when you look out into this so-called world, all you see is danger, danger, danger. But someone who is, let's say, very secure, they got a job, they own their home, their health is in good order, they got their finances in check, they got plans, they got contingency plans, and so on. Then they're not going to be so anxious about the unpredictable. They can forecast. So how you see, if you think your life is just suffering, I did this in a different video where I said if you interpret life to be suffering, it's because you got to think about how are you perceiving, what is it that's leading you to believe that life is about suffering? Is it because you keep incurring pain? So if you keep thinking like everything I do, I'm getting pain for it, then you're going to come to the conclusion or the belief that life must be about suffering then. You know, and in that same video, I said you could flip that around and be like, if you think everything is sunshine and rainbows and bliss, then that is also just as bad. It's not an accurate depiction of what reality is. So to answer your question there, Freebird, do we really see the world? You see what you want to see. And this is a good point he makes, where it is amazing. And when you have gratitude and appreciation, that sets you up for, it's more than just face value. Because I made this point to someone recently about narcissism. Let's try and take it back to narcissism a little bit. So the narcissist doesn't have gratitude. It doesn't have appreciation. Why is this? Well, if you consider the spoilt version of the narcissist in childhood, the spoiled little princess or something, they don't understand what meritocracy is. They get instant gratification. They're entitled. They think it's all about them. They get what they want, right? So there's no nurturing of gratitude or appreciation. And so as a result, when they get older, you can see how even if you give in to them, you buy them a sports car, you buy them a mansion house, they don't understand what that really means. They don't understand the blood, sweat, and tears that went into earning that just for them to then take it. So you would think they would be grateful. You give them the sun and the moon, you'd think they would be happy, but it's not that they aren't. They're incapable because they never learned how to be grateful or appreciative. It's beyond them. So that's a little bit of a false belief on our end for thinking that surely you'd be happy that I've given you the stars and the moon and so forth. But we're not realizing that they don't have the skill set. They are incapable of it, fathoming, like it's beyond their understanding because they're entitled. To them, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm supposed to get the stars and the moon, and guess what? I'm supposed to have the whole galaxy as well. You did me rotten here with just the stars and the moon. You know, like you're indebted to me still. So they're never happy. They're never satisfied. There is no limit. And for the victims or targets, as I prefer to say, one gentleman made this remark. He said something like his narcissistic partner did some horrible things, stole money or whatever. They got the kids, they got the usual stuff, right? But he said what hurt the most were the little things, just the little. He didn't describe what they were exactly, but we can kind of use our imagination. I would guess he was referring to like unnecessary pettiness. That it's just a little, like you didn't have to do that, but you did it anyway. And that sting. It's the little things that really sting. Like the big stuff, yeah, don't get me wrong. big stuff, like you find out your kid's not biologically yours, or they run off with your best friend or something like that. Yeah, that's a heavy blow. But it's the little things that sting the most, because they're just so unnecessary. And why does it sting? Because when you grow up with appreciation and gratitude, with that, you understand how little things matter. Little things, as despite being little, actually are very significant. The little things are what's going above and beyond. Just as unnecessary as it was for the narcissist to do these little stings to you, it's also in a way going above and beyond when someone does do something little for you, because it's unnecessary. So the word unnecessary is actually a neutral wording. It works in both directions here. It could be unnecessary where it hurts you by stinging you a lot, but it can also be unnecessary as in, like, you didn't have to do that for me. I really appreciate that. That was so nice of you. You know, you put a little cherry on my cake, you know, or whatever. So you can see the contrast where, and this is coming from that concept of appreciation and gratitude, where deriving from that, you create values and meaning and significance and importance. Things like memories, and if it's between people, you know, it's that kind of stuff that makes for a stronger relationship. You know, someone who doesn't need to do that for you, but they did it anyway. And it might not have been something that was like breaking their back over it, but it's the thought that counts. You know, you hear that kind of cliche? Well, there you are. But with the narcissist, there is no thought, and it doesn't count. So if you can be more appreciative and more grateful, then you end up having a more fulfilled, worthwhile, valuable life experience in general. And this also ties into the topic of this idea of self-love and abundance, because in survivalistic, all right, so I'll take this from the other end. So if you're survivalistic, you're very selfish, you're very vulnerable, it's hard to have gratitude, it's hard to have empathy, it's hard to have self-love, right? You're in a hostile environment. Survival is all that matters. Now, if you look at that from the other point, where if you are able to secure yourself, have stability, you build up your self-esteem so that you're not so reliant on other people rescuing you. You can relax more. You're not so scared of. You can have trust of your environment and yourself, being able to cope and manage. You're building up your self-esteem and so on. You are then able to exercise things like this idea of self-love, which means that's really the way I believe one should go about in terms of recovery. It's not to initially inject self-love as a fix, as a cure-all, to get you out of your funk or situation, because you haven't got when you're in that sort of position, you haven't got the self-esteem is like a container. You don't even have a container to hold self-love in. So what you need in the beginning is being a bit more proactive, doing what needs to be done, kind of like robotic a little bit, just do it anyway. And if you stay the course, self-love will find you rather than you trying to inject it into your life artificially. Because the act of sorting yourself out is self-love. See what I'm saying? Because if you try and inject self-love, well, now you're not going to sort yourself out. You're not going to get yourself on track or anything, because you are filled with self-love. You're high on a drug. But if you do it the other way, where you sort yourself out, you get your health better, you might not be happy about it. You don't have to be happy about it. You go for walks, you have new experiences. You might still be a grumpy SOB or whatever, but you're putting yourself out there. You're putting an effort in. You're showing up in the world and reality, and participating in this thing called life. Then, as grumpy as you might start off being, you'll start to realize that, yeah, you know what? Actually, I am actually having a good time. So the self-love, now you're able to allow that to not just enter you, but to be generated. And from then having that kind of that furnace fire being ignited it's like you've got to make the kiln. You've got to make the oven first before you can have a fire. But once you've got your fire, your oven made, your kiln, and now you've ignited the passion inside you, and now it's a raging fire. Now you're in abundance of self-love. Now you're able to give to others. You see? And this is where you could be grateful and have appreciation in the act of serving or sacrificing to others. And this is something I get a bit worried about when I hear people recovering, is they become very selfish. It's kind of like a knee-jerk reaction to dealing with a narcissist. It's like the narcissist has been taken from you all this time. You've been a giver, they've been a taker. Well, you need to be a taker. You need to make this about you. And that's a half truth, because yes, you need to give yourself some compassion and treat yourself better and so on. But don't become an inversion of the narcissist and just become this selfish, just arrogant kind of egomaniac, where and you call it being stoic or something. Oh, I'm just being an alpha, apex, sigma, omega, whatever. It's all about me now. That's not going to be a quality of life, because this might sound a bit hippy dippy, but you'll find it's through the sacrifices that things show, they present like significance and what matters. It doesn't mean you're being a simp or a cuck or something like that, because if you're in abundance, then in some ways you need to give that out in as not necessarily as charity, but in generosity. And this is why when you have kids, that's one of the mechanisms there. Because if you're so selfish, you wouldn't give a damn about your children. So the only way you can really have children is if you care about yourself to such an extent that you want to share that abundance with someone, i.e. your children. And it's not with a strings attached. It's a gift. It's, here you go. I've got, like, I'm enjoying life so much, and the world so much, and whatever it is. And I enjoy being me, whatever. That I'm handing some of it over to you so that you can enjoy it as well. And it's for you to keep. It's yours now. It's not mine. I might have given you some tools, I might have given you some wisdom or whatever it is, but it's for you. And like, there's this argument of like there is never really a true altruism, but it's that kind of satisfaction of doing good for someone else, instead of doing them rotten. Hey Chris, good to see you here. So when you really see the world, hold on, let me put it up. Sharing. When you really see the world we live in, you can't help but be in a constant state of amazement. Excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. Well, yeah, it's pretty amazing when you think about it. Not just in terms of the marvels, but even the debauchery is kind of amazing in itself. It is a funny little place we live. But easy for us to say, right? If you're in the thick of struggles, if you're in the thick of chaos and pain and suffering and whatever, then it's hard to have, because your worldview shrinks. So it's hard to have this more broader perspective as Freebird is having here. Yeah. And again, it's not to be judgmental, but it's to have appreciation for where people are. And what they're having to deal with. Pain is unavoidable. Pain is the greatest of all teachers, they say. And I think I had a little bit of an advantage in a way when it comes to this idea of pain. This isn't to brag, but because I'm a diabetic. So, and I say this to my kids sometimes when she does, she's scared of going to the doctor or going to the dentist or something like that. And I say, hey, every day I have to do injections. It stings, whatever, right? I don't enjoy it, but guess what? It has to be done. So pain is temporary. Pain is in the mind. And that doesn't necessarily, that could work against you because you can become desensitized to pain and then you tolerate unnecessary pain, So you need to have that kind of understanding of like what is acceptable. But in terms of being frightened and scared of it, there is no need. It's kind of the problem isn't so much the pain itself. The problem is that you're afraid. That's what's hurting you, really. It's kind of funny, isn't it? It's not the pinch that hurts. It's the anticipation that wreaks havoc in one's mind. So don't be afraid of the pain. It's like it's an emotion. It comes in waves. There'll be the intense part, I suppose, but it will fade, and you hardly remember it probably. So the brain has its mechanisms to deal with things like pain, like childbirth. You would think giving birth to a child would be so much pain that they wouldn't want to have a second child. But what happens? Women have more than one child. Why is it they're willing to have another child? There's a mechanism in their brain that kind of I don't know how it works exactly, but it makes it possible. Go ask a woman who's had multiple children. But yeah, so this brings up this idea of fear. Fear is paralyzing, and when people are very anxious is worry of, it's fear of the unknown. What's the other one where you're scared when you do know what it is? It's damn it, anxious and the kind of like they're kind of like cousins, they're like brothers or whatever. Anxious and I've forgotten the other word. But yeah, anxious is fear of the unknown. You don't know. And this, again, for people who are victims in terms of this recovery conversation, they're not used to making good decisions or even any decisions really. And now they're in a situation where it's like, you're going to have to be responsible for yourself. And that in itself is nerve-wracking. They don't know how to look after themselves. They don't know what they should be doing. So there's a lot of fear and anxiety on top of everything else going on, which is why education and learning, hopefully these types of conversations helps provide a sense of relief, because for those who are inexperienced, they could be somewhat reassured. It's like, thank goodness I'm not on my own here. There are other people. In fact, they're not just other people. There are people who have unpacked it and can help explain what it is. It's not such a mystery to me. The terrain around me isn't foreign anymore. I can get my bearings. I know I can make sense. And in turn, I can therefore reassure myself. I'm becoming more secure in my environment because I'm becoming more familiarized to my environment. It's not such the twilight zone. Like this idea where people talk about clown world or the twilight zone, they still haven't quite figured it out. They think because they've got a catchy coin term, they think that will be good enough to explain what it is they're dealing with. But it's not really. It's just saying, I'm in clown world, basically. I'm in a magical place. I'm in fantasy land. I don't know what my environment is necessarily. But when you unpack it further and you do the deep dive, you realize it's not accidental. This isn't Alice falling into Wonderland. There are mechanisms in place. There are substructures. There are needs and protocols. Despite the land of fantasy, which appears to have no boundaries, there are structures and stipulations. For example, like this idea of control and fuel. You see that there are concerns for those in this landscape. There are needs that need to be met. That means there are rules. It's just you're not sure what those are yet. So it's not as foreign or alien as it may seem on the surface. It's just you don't know what kind of game or what it is you've got involved with. But this is where the education plays a part to explain it to you. Freebird's coming out with some more stuff. Okay, 150,000 people alive today won't be here tomorrow. So if you wake up tomorrow, be glad you're not one of them. Oh, how lovely. You know, yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's a bit morbid. I mean, I could say it's like, well, it's up to you. Yeah. If you want to make that kind of drastic decision, you don't have to be here tomorrow if you don't want to. But I'm not encouraging that sort of behavior. But I think we all get the point. Going back to appreciate, like this is the sad thing. It was in that book I was reading to my kid a few chapters earlier on. It's The Alchemist. We're reading The Alchemist, and he makes this point where basically like people will go on their journey, they go on their like quest, their adventure or whatever. They'll cross the desert, and it'll be endurance and struggle, so on. And more often than not, they give up just as they're about to be successful, just as they're to succeed. If they just stuck it out for one more day or something like that, they would have reached their treasure. But how are they to know? What they were thinking about was, I've spent months and years or however long walking across the desert. I'm sore, I'm achy, I've had enough. I can't see the finish line. All I see is more of the same. And they give up right on the doorstep. So that is something we can kind of take lesson from, where if you are in a spot of hot water or whatever, if life is kicking you in the nuts and stuff like this, and you're struggling, the pain, and you're like, I can't take it anymore. Like, humans are very good at adapting, and you can look at it as a positive or a negative. Like, we can tolerate a lot of crap. If you've already managed this far, why not go the distance? It might not be as far as you think. You might already be on the doorstep of your salvation, of your freedom. The next day, some of these lessons click in and you realize, right, I know what I'm going to do now. And then you take control of your life, and you move in a more positive direction. So that could be like a tongue-in-cheek kind of answer to give to someone. It's sort of like, don't give up now, like the best is yet to come. What if that is just around the corner for you? You're not going to know if you give up now, are you? And with that comes a bit of objectivity and some perspective. Because obviously this could work like the sunk cost fallacy. Like, maybe it is a mistake to continue walking through the desert. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're not on the doorstep, or it's just around the corner. Maybe it's another 5 years of trekking. Maybe it would be better to turn back, get a camel, and try again by some other means. So you need to have that sort of a level of awareness, know your options, making executive decisions, weighing up pros and cons, a little bit of risk taking, and so forth. But if you're giving up in terms of like, no longer alive, that's pretty fine. That's pretty definite. There's not really much you can do with that proceeding. And this is what I mean about like the bad the bad in life finds us. We have to actually seek the good. It may seem like the bad finds us. Again, this is to do with perspective. And it's up to you to what extent you want to let that bad stuff into your life. Like, you could have bad stuff going on constantly. Like, your body, what's the stats on bacteria? How many germs are in your mouth and your gut and crawling on your skin and your eyeballs? Isn't it something like you're more bacteria than you are human cells, or something crazy like that? Now, granted, some of this is like air quotes, like good bacteria, but I'm sure there's like dust mites or whatever feeding on your, like trying to eat you alive or something mad like that, but you're unfazed by it. It's nothing to you, So what do you constitute as bad, and of that, how much of it are you going to let it get you down? It's like, it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of a real world example. Like, I'm sure you could think of something. It's bad stuff happens. Now, some people they're unfaithful. Like, you get a flat tire. It's like, yeah, so what? I've got a spare in the boot. You know. Now, for some other people, they'll get a flat tire, and they're at a loss. It's ruined their entire day. They haven't got the money to buy a new tire. Now they've got a week of craziness. Now they can't get to work. All this. Why? Is it because of some evil tire that decided to, or a nail that decided to pop the tire? No, it's because they haven't been prepared enough to have a spare, or to have the money to repair it, or to know what to do if you get a flat tire. So a lot of this bad stuff that happens to us could be avoided if you were just more responsible. So in a way, it's like, what's really bad? Is it the nail in the road that gave you a flat tire, or is it your approach to life, your attitude that stinks because you think it's not going to happen to you? Yeah. But the point here, the second part here, you have to actively seek the good. Yeah, like it's very easy to be negative, and because it's victimhood, it's the easy way out. It's like why be responsible and diligent about looking after my car and having money in the bank and knowing what to do if I have a flat tire? Maybe I'll have to get a taxi cab to work or something, or get the bus. Why do all that if I can just say I'm a victim, the world is out to get me? You know, like, it almost sounds deranged to think that if you were to get a flat tire and it meant that, damn it, now I'm going to have to cycle to work, walk to work or something, that maybe that is like a blessing in disguise. So sometimes it's good to have bad things happen, because it teaches us. Like, pain is a teacher that teaches us. So it can be. It all depends on your attitude and how you want to look at things. Are you in a glass half empty, glass half full? What's this? Pain is instant. Pain is instant. No. Yeah, I'm sure people are like, ooh, my back, gradual. Oh, my shoulder is getting more and more grindy, more stiff. Oh, it's hurting more and more. Pain can be incremental. Pain can be slow and torturous. Suffering is long term. Oh, okay, I see. So pain is instant. Suffering is so. So if your pain is prolonged, now it's suffering. Suffering is a type of pain, is it not? Suffering is long-term optional. Suffering is a choice. Just like how do you want to look at things? Like, pain is a choice. Like, the other thing I say to my kids sometimes when I do my injections is, yeah, it stings. Yeah, there's a bit of pain there. But guess what? It's so that I can feel better. Because if I don't have my insulin, I'm going to feel like crap, and that's suffering. It doesn't hurt necessarily, but it makes you feel kind of sick. Makes, like, it's hard to describe it sometimes when you've got high sugar. It's kind of like, imagine your blood has turned into like rust, and the joints and your muscles are they've kind of, they feel like they're ripping apart sometimes. If you're sitting down and now you're trying to walk up and down stairs with a high blood sugar, oh, that is painful. Like, javelins have been shoved into into your thighs, so it feels like your muscles are ripping to pieces. So which would you prefer? would you rather have a little sting from a little needle for a couple of seconds while you do an injection, or would you rather have your entire body feel like just like crap? So in that sense, you know, sometimes I kind of look forward to having an injection because I know it'll make me feel better. It's like a sort of perverted form of sadism. It's like, yes, give me the injection. Go on, Freebird. You're the only one bouncing ideas off here with me here now. Social media creates distorted perceptions of the world by highlighting the most insane people. Yeah, the cuckoo. Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, crazy like a coconut. Yeah. Well, in the olden days, there would be the what is it called? The circus, the freak show. What is it called? The freak show, isn't it? Like the freak circus, like the bearded lady or whatever. Well, those days are gone. We don't need it anymore. We've got social media. So people are curious about oddities. Someone's acting crazy. It kind of makes you wonder what's going on over there, because we notice more of the out of place than the things that are typical or normal. Because things that are typical and normal are predictable, you know, like they're not threatening. So we become blind to it. But when things are out of the ordinary, in terms of our survival senses and so on, we pay attention to it because it might be important. It might be, we might need to know about a crazy person over there because crazy person might suddenly pull out a knife on us, you know. So it's a little bit like hard to help, not hard to help. It's hard not to do that, sort of take notice of oh yeah, what's that? It's sort of in our biology to notice, but yeah, we can at the same time become because what happens is we notice, so our dopamine gets a little kind of tickle and goes, oh, well done for noticing that. So we get a little bit of a reward for noticing, and then we become addicted to stimuli and new things. We like having new things because it charges us, it energizes us with this dopamine of like new and novelty. Kind of like having new information gives us like a competitive edge to things. So we are incentivized to find new things in various forms, like things of interest, quirky things even. And so we're kind of suckers for it in a way. That's why advertising is so effective, and these devices, internet, social media, movie, whatever, music, where it's kind of like a human. It's not supposed to be necessarily a weakness, but it can be exploited as a weakness, where try as you might want to have your discipline and stoicism and so on, you know, you're gonna have to be like really tough as nails to recognize yourself being sucked in such a way, and then to be able to disengage. But then you've got that kind of counterbalance where you see it so much, you become desensitized. And so you start looking for even more crazy stuff. Oh, speaking of mental pain, a harsh word may hurt for a moment. There's a chance as to whether we let that pain turn into long-term suffering. Yeah, I mean, there's a bit more to, like, not just the word itself, but like the delivery of that word, how it's said, how it's expressed, the body language that goes with it, the volume, the tonality, and the particulars, the context. Because let's say, all right, pick a word that we can use as an example. Ferret. Should we use ferret? Weasel. We'll use weasel. All right. I might, hey, you're a weasel. Like, oh my God, you hurt my feelings. But if I'm berating you non-stop, calling you all sorts of names, and then I say weasel, you might be like, ugh, that doesn't hurt as much anymore because you've been berating me all this time. Weasel's probably like the least offensive word at this point. But yeah, it's somewhat of a choice. How much of a choice is it? Because I think there's a few variables to that equation. If it's someone that matters to you and they said it, then you would take note of it. But if it's someone that you don't care about, then they could say anything pretty much. And you might remember that they've said something to you, but there's no emotional attachment to it. So it might be a question of how much emotional attachment to the wording as well as the person who said such thing. And then your choice with how you want to respond. Once we decide how long we suffer. Yeah. That's a better way of putting it, really. And I think a more useful way of putting it. More profound way. And, again, it's like, it doesn't mean whatever was said doesn't matter. It might still matter. It's just whether or not you want it to hold you down in such a way that ergo you feel like you suffer from it. And going back, trying to remind myself that this is supposed to be a conversation about narcissistic recovery. So the narcissist will say horrible, mean things to you. Some of it will be true, some of it won't be. And I think what hurts the targets the most isn't so much what was said. It's a little bit like that point about the little things stinging. It's who it comes from. That is what makes them suffer, because this is supposed to be a person that loves them, and they love both ways, their wife or something. And to see that kind of, I can't believe they said that, whatever it was, even if it's something like I don't love you, there's no foul language in there. There's no insult or swear word or something like that. But an expression like that is traumatizing. It reverberates. Hearing something like, it was all a lie. None of it was true. It's hard to want to accept hearing something like that. So in a way, there's a lot of self-harming going on for the targets. Unnecessary or additional layer of self-inflicted suffering that was created by the target themselves. The narcissist is such an abuser that they are able to teach the targets how to abuse themselves, even when out of company, even when the narcissist is departed and isn't there in proximity. The target is programmed to carry on the abuse, and that's pretty sad to say. You see that a lot. These people, they don't even realize how self-harming, like maybe they're talking about their trauma bond, maybe they're talking about the cognitive dissonance, maybe they're talking about trying to co-parent, they're trying to be cooperative with the other, like they're trying to follow moralities and still try and be a nice guy and be decent, and they don't realize how all these different things, like that is not really helping them. It's prolonging their they're still in the web, they're still caught, they're still participating in this abuse, because they can't quite go full no contact or something. I mean, even if you go full no contact, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the self-harm is over. It's just one of the steps in terms of a person trying to heal before they hopefully recover. It's not even trying to heal, it's just to stop incurring more damage, because you're not going to get better if you're still messing around with someone who is, at the end of the day, trying to cause you harm. So if you don't want to suffer as much, you're going to have to become a bit more responsible. Unfortunately, some people don't want to be responsible, and they start to identify with suffering, the victimhood, and they become desensitized to the pain. So their tolerance, it's kind of like they all these things that help your survivability are corrupted in a way to help prolong your agony. So your tolerance, which normally is to help keep you surviving, now instead makes you endure more of the abuse, even if it's self-inflicted, and you're desensitized to it. So you've become numb. You've detached yourself from your body, your physical body, as well as maybe reality. You're now living in your head. You're escaping the pain of reality and the lack of self-love. You escape the pain of life by entering a state of living death. And the transaction, or the fee, to the subscription fee for this regime is you have to pay with your suffering tokens. Well, okay, forgive me, Billy, but I think psychology overcomplicates it. Well, I don't know if psychology overcomplicates it, but I'm doing that right now. Obviously, I'm overcomplicating. I've got nothing to talk about. No one else is giving me something to bounce off ideas with, so I've got to make a mountain out of a molehill here. So I'm basically just rambling to myself. No offense to you, Freebird. I mean, thank you, Freebird, for you're throwing me a biscuit here, and I'm like, okay, all right, I'm gonna make this biscuit last, like crumb by crumb. But welcome to the maddening world of Billy, hey? Okay, fine. Want me to shut my mouth? Throw me another biscuit. Beat down? Am I beating you down? I don't know. There might be some nuggets of usefulness. Maybe someone listening is trying to go to sleep, and I'm helping them go to sleep. It's like a bedtime story. Yeah, but all in all, okay, look, it's like in 20 minutes it'll be like 2 hours. I don't know if I'll go for another 20 minutes, but all in all, in terms of a conversation about narcissistic recovery, and I was hoping there'd be people with no offense to the people who have been asking questions and leaving comments, but I was what is that in that magazine? Is that like agony aunt? I was hoping to be like an agony aunt today. Like, come one, come all, tell me your problem, and I'll try and answer it in a nutshell. But I guess there are no people with any issues that they need help with. I guess I'm not needed. Oh well. So I just wrap it up then? Only 4 people watching. See, talking about suffering and enduring the suffering. 4 of you are tough. 4 of you like punishment. 4 of you are masochistic or sadistic. I'll be the one masochistic, wanting to hurt you. Okay, there we go. I thought this was going to be a joke, like 2 narcissists walk into a bar. If 2 narcissists get into a relationship, do they just explode? Yes or no? You're going to be dealing with caliber of narcissists, first of all. One tends to be more dominating than the other. So in that sort of framework, one is more of the grandiose, overt, and the other becomes more sort of covert and vulnerable. But they will interchange. they can actually get along in the beginning, at least, especially because they're feeding each other's fuel. They're feeding into the fantasy of one another, of supremacy and control, and we're the best, we're the power couple. A lot of celebrity couples, for example, are a pair of narcissists getting together. So do they explode? Well, yeah, because there starts to be one is trying to control the other more than the other is willing to sort of accept, if that makes sense. Like one is becoming more is one thing to there's a bit of a kind of like give and take in general with relationships. So you could argue that's like a bit of backwards and forwards with the power dynamic. But for the narcissists, because they don't know when there's a limit, when's enough's enough sort of thing, and they're very greedy and self-centered and all this. So one of them probably like the grandiose, most likely, tends to push it a bit too far. So then the other partner has to now raise the ante and regain control. So instead of perhaps not like necessarily cooperating in a healthy, positive relationship way, like cooperating in the terms of alliance, from that they become more competitive with one another, and now they look at each other as opponents. So yeah, it can be very explosive, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship is over either. They could still stay together. It's just become very dysfunctional. So maybe they might separate, but they stay married. They both have their own partner. They both move out. They go live off with other people, start new families, but they're still technically married. Or they go back and have little flings with each other or something like that. So it's very messy, and a lot of venom will take place. That's the kind of quick sort of answer. I think Sam Vaknin makes he makes loads of videos anyway, but he does a good video where he explains the mind, like the mind games that go on in those sort of relationships, which normal people wouldn't want to have to contend with, like paranoia and like triangulating and smear campaigning and all this sort of stuff. And you could also make an argument that the victims don't, or targets don't like to hear this. But if you're going to be in a relationship with a narcissist, especially for like years and years and years, that co-partner or whatever has to start becoming somewhat narcissistic. Doesn't mean they're a narcissist, but they have to become narcissistic themselves if they want to simply survive. They're part of the transactional relationship. It takes two to tango. So whoever the narcissist is with, even if the other person isn't really a full-blown narcissist, their spouse, the people in their, not just their spouse, but their friends and family, and whoever's in the orbit of a narcissist has to have some level of narcissistic traits in order to manage and survive the proximity of being around a narcissist. What type of people do narcs hate the most? Everyone. Who don't they hate? Who do they hate the most? If it might sound a bit of a corny answer, it's that inner child of theirs. So in a way, they hate themselves the most. And the interactions they have with people remind them of that inner hatred they had for themselves. So it's not really a competition in a sense. It's like, if you're in that categorization of being hated, does it matter if you're hated a little or hated a lot? It doesn't really make a difference. So they generally just hate everyone. But deep down, which they won't want to acknowledge, who they hate the most is themselves. Probably followed by, in second place, if there were a second place, probably followed by whoever it was that triggered the initial traumatic event. So I'm talking about the childhood injury that they incurred, probably one of both of their parents. So they'll be like the runner-up. But it's a twisted kind of thing, the idea of hate, because hate, and on the flip side, you've got love. Who does a narcissist love, kind of thing? Who they love is the same person they kind of despise. So it's a bit of a weird blend, where, you know, you could argue like they love the things they hate. You know, they love hating themselves because they need reason to hate. Hating makes them feel good, so they love being disappointed by who they are. You know, you see how it's sort of like crazy thinking. Does Darth Vader hate himself? I don't really know. I'm not a big Star Wars fan. I assumed it was people they can manipulate. What, people that they love or people they hate? Because the people they can manipulate, it's got, like, on the one hand, it's sort of like, haha, yes, I have power and control over you because I can manipulate you. But at the same time, it's this sort of disrespect. It's like, you're such a weakling that I was able to trick you. I've got no respect for you. And you're supposed to be my husband or wife. So you're a bit of a disappointment. Usually what happens is, when you say no to the narcissist and you tell them to F off, and you go no contact, that is when suddenly now they care. Suddenly now they have respect for you. But it's because you're gone. You know, it's because you stood up to them. No, it's not. It's of no use. It's a bit late now to have respect. It's like, you see what I mean? It's a bit late to say well done to someone or to give them respect once they've had enough of you. Like, when we were talking about that appreciation and gratitude earlier, it's kind of like, why couldn't they have been thankful? Why did they look at people's generosity as a sign of weakness, when really generosity is a show of strength? See, that's something a narcissist can't understand. People with healthy boundaries, it'll be easier for the narcissist to just say they simply don't exist. It's not so much that they hate them, it's they are of no use to the narcissist. So in terms of having hate for people, it would be for people who have tried to maybe expose the narcissist, or has failed the narcissist, who has been too clingy, and because the narcissist isn't there to help, isn't the caretaker of other people. Other people are the caretakers of the narcissist. So if you're sick, for example, and now the narcissist has to look after you, they would really hate that, you know. But it's a different kind of, it's sort of like an irritation type of level of hate. It might not necessarily be, I mean, it might be good, and not, it might seem, it pretty much is hatred. You know, they despise you, they spit on your coffee and your food, and they kick you out on the streets, and they treat you like crap and all this. Yeah, that's pretty much hatred. But really, when you put it into perspective, they do those things out of control. It's like salt. It's like rubbing salt in the wound. They don't really have to do it. Obviously, they don't have to do it, but it's not that they're doing it because they hate you. Is what I'm saying. They're doing it because it's a exertion of control, a demonstration of their power that makes them feel better. So the more cruel I can be to you and make you suffer, it's not because I hate you, it's because I want to feel powerful and in control, that I can do these sort of things. That is why I'm doing them. So I make an example out of you. Now, if you manage to fight back and you happen to get the custody of the kids and I go to jail because of it or something like that, even then I will blame you and say this is all your fault, and I'll make it seem like I really hate you. I'll become obsessed about you. But again, what hurts more isn't that you won, it's that I lost. It's I feel like a failure. I feel inferior. I hate myself because I suck. And you were the one that showed me that. So even though I might hate what you've done by showing me that I'm a useless, inferior, loser, rubbish person, really, I'm still more angry at myself that I wasn't good enough to beat you and to show the world who is really better. So again, it's, they hate themselves more than anyone, but that doesn't take away from what they do to their victims and targets and so on. It doesn't like minimize the, because it kind of like the hatred comes as an extension. They have an abundant. We talk about an abundance of self-love that you pass on to your children. They have an abundance of self-hate. Star Wars was a tragic tale of love manipulation, losing everything to greed, and it also has redemption. Yeah, it kind of, that's why I don't really, it was a bit too much of a space opera to me. I was just like, huh? He's whose son and brother, and what? Their brother and sister, and that's weird, and that's his dad, and huh? They're all relatives? Gosh, like a dysfunctional space family. No, I was more of a Star Trek kind of guy. Oh, right, okay. Avoid. All right. So who would they want to avoid? People with healthy boundaries. Yeah. They would want to avoid, because that would be like a mirror. So the healthy people are classified as toxic. Stay away from the healthy people; they'll make us sick. So yeah, there'll be no. They've got no use for the healthy people. Healthy people would catch on to what they're doing. Remember, they want control and fuel. So if they can't control a healthy person and they can't extract fuel from them, then stay away. They go off to find, well, who around here is going to give me what I want? Not you? Okay, I won't hang around you then. I'll go where I can, like a vampire, but I can go where I can suck the blood. So healthy people, yeah, they avoid healthy people. Otherwise, most people, everyone else, has potential. They evaluate, they work out, right, this person is good for money. Okay, this other person has a car I could borrow, I could use, I could steal, or whatever. This other person has a house, I can crash at their house. This other person is good in bed. This other one has good looks. This other one is a lawyer. This other one is, so they have several relationships. It's just we might not recognize it as a conventional, like a romantic relationship, but to a narcissist, they don't have romantic. Well, I mean, they'll have like the sexual, I suppose, relationship and a sort of romantic relationship, but they're polyamorous in a way. Like they have relationships with all sorts of people. It's just in different formats. It's validation. Validation is the currency. Sex is a currency. The children are a currency. A husband or a wife by title is a currency. Your lawyer is a currency. All these different things. The person, the car owner, is a type of currency. These are like assets. These are commodities. These are possessions for the narcissist to own. So their relationships aren't really proper relationships. They are is ownership. You're my slave. I own you. You give to me. You do as I say. And they look at the different people as like, right, there's no point asking my lawyer to be the same person who I want to steal from the shop for me. I'll have a thief do that. I'll have the thief do the robbing, and I'll have the lawyer to get me out of jail. So they attribute the usefulness from whoever it is part of their fuel matrix, their harem of supply. You would think the narcissist would want to stay away from the survivor groups and all this information, but some would, but others actually gather because they want to learn. It's not because they want to self-reflect and say sorry to people. No, they want to. It's an arms race. So it's like if you got someone like myself who's divulging the secrets or something like that, or the tips and tricks, then it becomes of importance to the narcissist, so that they can become, especially the more higher cerebral narcissists, so that they can improve their manipulation and go undetected. They need to know what the prey know, because they need to know if they're being figured out. It's like, oh, I'm being rumbled. Oh no, they're onto me. Quick, I better find someone who doesn't know, intercept, get them into the cult, and turn them into a flying monkey, so that if anyone tries to warn them, then my slave here won't abandon me. That's not their prey. I'm not sure what in context. Is that with the last bit you said? What I'm saying is that manipulators don't like people they can't manipulate. That's not their prey. Well, everyone to them, generally speaking, is potential. They want to know how susceptible. So it's like testing the water. They'll make a few connections. They'll get into one friend circle and then branch out from there. oh, could you introduce me to your friend over there? So you can see how dependent a narcissist is on people. Whereas for the victims and targets, when they go onto when they want to really pursue recovery and healing and stuff like that, it's a bit of a painful reality for them. But most of the relationships and friendships that they've had will not be the same. Like, they'll lose friends, they'll lose family. That's just how it is. So people in recovery, it can be very lonely for them. That's why it's good when you've got support groups, for them to realize that they're not really, they make new friends, new connections, but their old life in a way kind of ends along with the relationship with the narcissist. It's just how it is. Yeah, there's going to be some losses, and you have to be okay with that. So, but it's not the end of the world, and you get new relationships, new friendships, and whatever, and you put the work in, you invest in yourself, and bada bing, bada boom is pretty. You'll be you'll be better off and a lot happier, and more relieved, less anxiety and stress and disingenuous sort of stuff. You don't have to walk on eggshells, and you could be more authentic and speak the truth, and not have to censor yourself or hide away or whatever. But I know what you're trying to do there, Freebird. You're giving me sort of, and I appreciate that. Like, you're giving me sort of talking points to help me out with the stream. So it's been over 2 hours. Let's call it a night. Didn't quite go as I was hoping. Never mind. But for those who have been here, sat here, listening, I appreciate you very much, and thank you. Hope it was useful stuff, and enjoy your weekend. So have a good night. Thank you.